Hello, and welcome to the European Parliament YouTube channel. Today we're celebrating the nomination of firefighter, or the Will of the Wisp, for the nomination of a LUX Audience Award. And I'm joined by the director himself, João Pedro Rodrigues. Hi. So last night, the LUX Audience Award put on a screening of your film. And in the Q&A afterwards, you said that love and the love story between Afonso and Alfredo is the spinal cord of the film. So I wanted to ask you about depicting queer intimacy on film and whether you kind of deliberately reference queer artists or if it's something that just kind of like flows naturally.
I think all my films dealt with queerness, and but often there's love, there's hate, there's violence, there's tenderness. I think all my films are somehow connected with myself, and being a queer person for me was always important to be honest with myself, and so the stories that I want to tell somehow. This doesn't mean that I won't tell a story that is not queer, or that when I wanted to make films, I wanted to make queer films. For me, I am just making films that are natural for me to make, or the ones that I need to, the stories that I need to tell to others.
So it's kind of just like an expression of yourself rather than a conscious choice to does that make sense?
Yeah, when I started making films, I never thought of making, there's like in Portugal there's no queer films, so I'll be the first. For me it was always very natural, and when I say that it's personal, it doesn't mean that it's autobiographical. It's just the way that I see the world around me and the way that and also how it changed, because I started making films some time ago, in '97. So I'm the same person, but also a different person with more years and older, and that makes you see the world differently also. But I like this connection with reality and with the present of each film.
Yeah, I think your film was the first film that I saw that actually mentioned COVID-19 and had people die of it, because even films that have been produced during after the pandemic, it's kind of just an unspoken, we all have this context, but it's never depicted on film. So I really appreciated how your film actually said COVID-19.
For me, it was important. It was not written on the script, COVID-19, because it didn't exist. The film was written before the pandemic, so nobody would ever think that this would happen to the world. And so when I was supposed to shoot the film in 2020, and I couldn't because of the pandemic and then the lockdown. And so I was thinking about the film during all this time. The film was shot just at the end of 2021. Yeah. And I thought it's impossible to make this film and not bring this that is happening to it's not just in Portugal, it's not just something that is happening to me. The world has changed.
Yeah.
So for me, it's very important to also nurture the film with something that was tragic and dramatic that was happening and then I used it because the film is a comedy. I use it also in a way that is kind of ironical. And usually when people hear that the father died with COVID, people laugh.
Yeah. Yeah, I think because your film looks at really serious issues, from climate change to class conflict to race relations, and when you kind of hear the amount of themes that you're able to fit into a 67-minute film, you don't really think that there's going to be fart jokes and all this comedy. So why did you choose to broach these really grave issues in such comedic and kind of kind of bring a levity to it?
I think first because in art film or in art house film, there's not often comedy, and usually films are a little bit heavy. They're a little bit long too.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make a short film, so a film that is not very long. It even has an abnormal duration. People often think, it could be longer. I wished it was longer. But I think comedy is a good media or a good genre to bring serious issues and make people aware of them, but also in a light way and like not being just dramatic, because these are dramatic questions and important issues today and ever. It's not just a problem of today, or it's not just problems today. Climate change has been we've been destroying the world, basically. So for me, it was important to deal with these issues and also have fun at the same time.
Did you kind of start out thinking that you wanted to address these issues and then you came up with the story, or did you come up with the story first and then found a way to like weave in the issues?
That's a complicated question.
It's a chicken or the egg kind of question.
Because I'm not sure. I'm not very conscious. I think it was a little bit all at the same time. No, I think the idea of a prince, it's also a sort of a fairy tale. Because like the idea of princes, like also this idea, I think I was inspired by this article that I saw when I was at the dentist. I told this several times about the descendants of our royal family, and they were showing up their house. And we don't live in a monarchy for more than 100 years. But for me, it was this idea, how do you want to show yourself to others? Because the film is also a lot about identity, and I thought it was very. And it's not just the royal family, all the celebrities that show their houses and show their life to the common people. I like that idea of how do you deal with your own image? What do you want to bring, to keep to yourself, or what do you want the other people to know, And so I think this was perhaps the main idea and so I had this idea of a prince, like a fairy tale prince, because he's also a little bit like his image, a little bit like a stereotypical image of a prince, like the curly blonde boy, a little bit like Le Petit Prince, the Little Prince of Saint-Exupéry. And so I like this idea of playing with stereotypes, and so I think the other themes were, as we were writing the film, me and Paulo Lopes Graça and my partner João Pedro Rodrigues, everything went like naturally, flowed naturally into it.
I really liked how at the start, kind of as you're talking about like the stereotypes and like everyone's playing a role, and it's reflected in like the mise en scène, which is very like theatrical and like a very like static camera. And then when Alfredo goes to the fire department, things kind of open up and become a lot more dynamic. So could you talk about maybe that shift from that kind of like static theatrical style to the more dynamic kind of typical cinematic style?
I really wanted to stress it formally. I think it was important. We start in a world, and the prince starts in a world like a formal world of his family, like a kind of strict with a I don't know. We can imagine that he had a strict bringing up, and at the fire station he discovers freedom somehow, and so also the cuts are much faster, and so shots are much shorter, and I think you are aware of it while you're watching the film, even if you're not like specialized in film. Even like a common viewer can be aware of that, and I like that idea because I like strong formal visions in film, and that's the films that I like. So somehow what I'm trying to build up is my own vision of the world to share with others.
As well, I think from like Alfredo and Afonso's like first handshake to then the fire exercises, like the CPR and everything, there's this kind of like unspoken tension and like sensuality that then culminates in like the sex scene in the forest. And so I was wondering why it is so important to you to like show the sex so graphically and explicitly, because especially even in art house cinema, it's not something that we see so like up close and personal.
But I think I've always done that.
Yeah.
Well, with my first feature, Fantasma, in 2000, it was a question that I asked myself: why is sex away from images, filmic images? Why is it forbidden? Why? And it's part of our life. Or if you choose to have sex, you can have sex. So I thought, like, the triviality of life is, it's also part of the triviality of life, sex. So I think I had to bring these elements, more explicit elements, to the film, also to portray. That first film is more like a portrait of a lonely person. It's like a journey into loneliness somehow. And for me, and it deals with obsession, a little bit with transgression, and for me it was important to not be afraid of show what the film is talking about. But I think it also can. Then I did other things because I always try to not to keep not to find a style.
Yeah.
I try to I think you understand they're all my films, but they are very different from each other.
Yeah.
And I like that idea that I'm not repeating myself and I'm looking into other stuff and I'm experimenting. I think for me it's essential to feel that it's part of my freedom as a filmmaker. So in this film, I'm also doing it in a different way because you see like penises, but they are fake.
Yeah.
But what is curious is that sometimes people ask me in Q&As, but are they real?
It's such an interesting, that's what they latched onto. That was their burning question.
How can you think they're real?
Yeah.
Have you seen a real penis?
I was also moving away from fake or real penises. I was thinking, so the painting, The Marriage of Negra Rosa or The Bridal Masquerade is like very central to the film's like style and themes. But as well as that, the firemen all like enact these like poses where they reenact different artworks from like Caravaggio to Francis Bacon. And so I was wondering if you could talk about those like 5 pieces that you picked and like what's their significance.
Well, the painting in the prince's or in the royal family dining room. It's a painting that is a Portuguese painting from the 18th century that was made. It depicts the zoo of the queen at the time. So it's obviously a racist painting. And it was called The Marriage of Negra Rosa. And then it was a painting that was in private hands, and it was sold to a museum in France that deals with the slave trade. It's in La Rochelle. It's a really interesting museum. Everyone should go in there and see because it's very educational. And it deals with the slave trade because La Rochelle was one of the main ports where slaves arrived from like America, Africa, and Europe. So, and there are several ports. Portugal was part of that slave trade, of course. So it represents for me, the painting also, now it's in display in this museum, and it's called, because you cannot say the word Negro, of course, anymore, it's called The Bridal Masquerade. But for me, I use it because for me it kind of represents all the colonial past that is there, judging. Also, the way I edit it, when there's the reenactment, like the discourse of the Greta Thunberg, when the prince is saying that you see the faces of these people like accusing the others, and they are like the prince. They are accusing the other. So for me, that was very strong as an idea. And the other paintings, I think that I also learned how to make films by looking at paintings, and painting is something that is very important in my own education and my own way of. I always go and see paintings whenever I'm in, and I like to go because often nowadays with these retrospective exhibitions where you can see all the paintings in one place, I don't like that so much. I really like to go to that remote church or the remote museum where you can see that specific painting, and for me. Because it also belongs to a place. There's a journey until the painting.
There's a context around it.
Yeah. And it's a little bit like when I started making film, when I started watching, seeing films. Films were not available as they are now.
Yeah.
You had to wait for and I desired to see some of that because it was impossible.
Yeah.
It was simply there was no internet.
Yeah.
So it has to do with that. But I also dislike the idea that, or films that are obviously inspired by paintings. So. When I'm working on a film, of course, there's all this painting world around me, but I'm not thinking of a specific painter or a specific idea of painting. I think I learned how to compose images also by looking at paintings. But in this film, somehow I had an excuse because of the fireman calendar to reenact paintings.
Yeah.
So I chose some of my favorite artists, but not only like art, like very famous artists like Caravaggio or Francis Bacon, but also like there's a Portuguese caricaturist that was someone that was in prison before the revolution during the dictatorship in Portugal because he was criticizing church, he was criticizing the politicians, the regime, the fascist regime, like in a not evident way, but he was censored.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was also important to bring all these worlds together, not just the big art, but also the caricature.
Yeah. I also, was it a coincidence then that so many of them had firemen in the title? Or
I think we invented that.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
all the names of the paintings are kind of invented.
Okay. So I was going to ask, because your film was so delayed because of the pandemic, you had like this unprecedented amount of rehearsal time, and how valuable was that extra time, and is it something that you might implement in your films going forward? Obviously not the whole pandemic, but
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
I don't want to live through that again. Of course, nobody wants. I always rehearse a lot, but it's true that in this film I had really extra time to prepare, and I think it's what also made is that I used in the editing of the film all the shots that I shot. So, and that had never happened to me. So. It gives me the conscience that everything that I was doing was very precise already. Thought like even at the stage of just like writing. So the film is very much the same as what was written. Usually it happens a lot in my films. They are not very different. Yeah. But in this film was very extreme somehow. And I think it was, but also at the same time, it was, when we shot it, it was one of the most joyful shoots that I had because of the fact of being able to be together again and like hug people, and it was very important. I think it also helped because the film was is a comedy. It also helped. We were really having fun.
Yeah. Go back to the what you were saying about the painting, the bridal masquerade, and how it kind of acts as like a confrontation of like the Portuguese colonial legacy. I also noticed that during the sex scene was the song "The Uncloaked Man" Fado.
Yeah.
I saw that you said that is also a racist song. But is there something that you just find very important about not brushing away this kind of legacy and like actively engaging with it?
Yeah. Also be aware and try to use it in a critical but also. Because it's not by forgetting that you will reach a more equal world and a more fair world.
Yeah.
So for me, it's important to acknowledge that existed, and that song. It's a song that is sung by one of our most famous fado artists, Amália Rodrigues, and of course she was. she was not fascist at all. She was even condemned by she lived well. Most of her career was during the fascist regime, and she was doing fado. Fado was like the typical Portuguese song. It represented like the fascist regime had something that we call the three Fs. Was Fatima, the church, fado, and what is this third F? I don't remember, but anyway, there's this connection between like fado, this melancholic way of singing, Portuguese way of singing, and religion, and fascism.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's
Yeah.
So, but she always managed to sing. Her songs have lyrics from left-wing people, and she always managed to, at the same time, being in between something and being very progressive herself. But she also sang this song that is a racist song. It's a popular, but at the time it was seen as like a malicious song, you know. But it's not a very known song by her, and it's a little bit like hidden away.
Yeah.
You have to really to look into it.
Yeah.
But so I really felt that it really, because also during the sex scene they are using these racist insults to each other, as if through love they could appease all this past and all this racial past.
Like they could maybe like reclaim it in a way.
Sort of. Yeah, and that can only be done through love.
Yeah, because even afterwards in the car, they're like, you know, confronting each other, but it's kind of in a playful way. It's a continuation of the sex scene somehow. Yeah.
And they are playing with the same ideas.
Yeah, it's like a little bit of verbal sparring.
It's like role play also.
Yeah. So the film has been making the festival circuit for like almost a year now, and I wanted to ask how the LUX Audience Awards is different in that it's kind of opening the film up to more of a public audience, and like how maybe you felt the change or how you hope audiences may receive it.
I think it's very important because it makes the film available to people that perhaps will never see it, would never see it, and also in countries where perhaps the film would never be shown. Yeah. Because it's like the European context, but we have problematic countries nowadays. Like, I don't know if my film would ever be shown in Hungary.
Yeah.
It was shown in Poland because I know at New Horizons Film Festival. But for me, it's not just that. Even like in countries where because of the European Parliament, it manages to reach, I think, other people. Like yesterday was very striking in the audience. There was a lot of women, and I was very happy with that.
Yeah.
Because I had been here. I had been here with the film at the Queer Festival at the Pink Screens, and there was mostly men.
Yeah.
So this was really nice as a change, because what I'm fighting for is diversity and being able to be as you want to be.
Yeah.
And that is the main question, I think. It's something that I have always tried. And I've not tried, I've always did.
Yeah.
Because I believe very much that you cannot compromise.
Yeah.
I never compromise.
Yeah. I was thinking as well from the Q&A last night when you were talking about how love is so central to the film, how even aside from the love story between Afonso and Alfredo, there's love for like the environment as well, because even the song is arbor. My Portuguese pronunciation is not very good.
Amigo.
Yes.
Tree a friend.
Yeah, and how there's like love for even them, and how the children sing that like we need to like protect the trees. They're our friends. I was wondering if that love was something that you were conscious of all the way through, or if it's only kind of seeing everything together that you like saw it.
I think perhaps this is my happiest film.
Yeah, yeah.
I think perhaps it's the more, even if it ends well, even if it's a love story that eventually will have like tragic or a a disruption, I would say. But I think it's because then it ends in a finally we no I cannot spoil the film. I cannot.
It has an optimistic ending in parts. Yeah.
Now I lost myself a little bit.
We're talking about the tree, a friend, love.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so for that song, it's like a children's song it's kind of like a pre-ecological song. It's naive.
Yeah.
It was made for children to love nature or to be aware of nature. And for me, the prince is also young at that time.
Yeah.
He's like I don't know, 13 or something when he's with his father. Loving the forest or learning how to learn the forest. And so for me it was really, I use it in a very playful way. At the same time it's that, but it's a little bit like over the top.
Yeah, he really loves that forest.
He really loves that forest.
Yeah.
Perhaps you'll see how he loves it.
Yeah. I think we're coming to the end of the time, but I just want to flag that for anyone who sees The Will of the Wisp, you can go to luxaudience.eu and rate the film between 1 and 5 stars, and the film that has the highest rating, not the most, will end up winning the LUX Audience Award in mid-June in Strasbourg. So thank you so much for this conversation, and I hope I'll see you again in Strasbourg for the award ceremony.
Thank you.